Hello and welcome to the Charles Cook Podcast. The focus of this podcast is state and local issues here in the state of Tennessee. And today I have a fantastic guest that I have admired for a long time, for at least 12 years. I call that a long time. For many people that know me, they know that I am a big fan of Ron Paul. And this man right here is right up there with Ron Paul in my book. So, welcome, Sheriff Mack, Sheriff Richard Mack. Tell us about yourself and your organization, what you're doing, how you got started in this organization, and a little bit of your background.
Well, thank you, Charles. It's great to be with you. It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I still am amazed that there's people across the country that want to hear my story, and my kids wonder all the time, how come people want to listen to my dorky dad? So I I said, you know what? That was all a miracle, and I have nothing to do with miracles except to try to go along with them when they come my way.
Right.
But the Father of the universe was the one that orchestrated this miracle, and I just said, "Be happy to go along for the ride, Lord, and I'll go where you want me to go." And that's really what brought this. This was quite a spiritual battle, and my involvement with this was a very spiritual event for me and my wife. And it was quite the epiphany that got me here. But I'm just a small town boy from southeast Arizona, and all I ever wanted to be was sheriff in my hometown, which I was blessed enough to do back in 1988. I ran for Graham County Sheriff, which is Safford, Arizona, Safford being the county seat. And that's where I grew up. And it's a great place to live and a great place to be raised. And then in 1994, I became the first sheriff in American history to sue the federal government. And I sued, I started studying the Constitution way back when I was a rookie cop. And I was dedicated to the oath of office. I didn't want to take an oath and then summarily ignore it, like most people in government do.
Absolutely.
And so I started studying the Constitution. I said, there's no way, Charles, there's no way you can take an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution and you've never read it. How
Absolutely.
could you take that oath and keep it if you've
Mhm.
never understood it or read it or studied it? So I studied it, and I studied it a lot, and I became uh, quite expert at the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights. And
Yeah.
then, so I sued the Clinton administration in 1994. I had just been reelected a year before that, and it was on the Brady Bill. And the Brady Bill was the first time in history where the federal government promulgated legislation, an act, a bill, um, that commandeered the office of sheriff for federal bidding, and they threatened to arrest us. And this is most people think I'm making this up. This is absolutely the gospel truth. The federal government threatened to arrest us. Congress, the president, threatened to arrest us if we failed to comply with their commandeering of our office. We were ordered. We were ordered to enforce the Brady Bill for them for free.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have done it no matter how much money was involved. But this is the fact. We had to do it for them for free. And if we didn't, we were subject to a year in prison or a $10,000 fine or both. And so I just said, I don't know why every sheriff in the country wasn't joining us in this lawsuit, but I was the first to do this. And it's the only time in the history of America where a couple of small town sheriffs, where a couple of sheriffs, I don't care how big or small, where a couple of sheriffs sued the federal government, took it all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and we won. And it's the most powerful 10th Amendment decision in the history of America. And every American should have this little booklet in their pocket, in their home, and with them everywhere they go. And you should have a few extra so that you can give them to public officials and let them see this miracle that God provided for America. And for those of us who believe in state sovereignty, this is your case. And this details, Charles, the peaceful solution that is available to us if the states and the counties and the cities will but make proper use of this decision. It's there. It was a miracle. And we, the people, have got to take this to the streets and make sure that every public official in our state, county, and cities know about this. Oh, and school boards too.
Right, absolutely. And well, we're seeing a lot of people getting now starting to get involved in the school board elections and stuff because we're seeing
Amen.
What's happening in our schools and stuff. So, so after that, I guess along about the 2010 time frame, got a little involved in grassroots politics here in my local city and county, and we had a little grassroots group here. And that year, 2010 election, we had a sheriff's election that rolled around, and so we decided to hold a county mayor and then a sheriff's debate. And I have a good friend of mine. His name is Bobby, and I think you may know the name when I mention it. The late Michael Backnerick.
Oh, of course.
Yeah,
Of course. Dear friend. Very dear friend.
Passed away
Yes.
last year. Well,
Yes.
my friend Bobby had went to one of his constitutional classes or seminars, and I think he just picked up the book. I don't think you were there. It was here in Tennessee, and I think he picked up your book there and he read it. And so in this, when we were getting ready for our debate, we were coming up with our questions. And Bobby said, and he purchased a couple of your books, a couple extra of your books, so we could get them.
You're talking about the County Sheriff, America's Last Hope.
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. Oops, my plane there. This book right here. And
yes, sir.
Folks, if go order this on the Sheriff Mack's website, and I think that is what's your website? CSPOA.org.
That is correct. CSPOA.org, Constitutional Sheriffs Peace Officers Association, CSPOA, CSPOA.org.
Yep. And anyway, you can order it there and give it to your sheriff and your county commissioners and all the politicians you got. It's good for all of them. But anyway,
every citizen should read that book.
Yes. And so Bobby said, let's ask a couple constitutional questions to our sheriff.
Yeah.
And so our sheriff, who was running for re-election, was being challenged by a guy. And I mean, he had signs all over the county. And so we put a couple Constitution questions in there. And when we asked the questions, the challenger passed on both questions. He passed. Yes, he passed on both questions. And so there was a lot of people there that were supporting the guy. But when they left, I heard them saying, I can't vote for someone who can't even answer a constitutional question. So that, your book, and us reading it and putting the constitutional questions to these guys and asking them where they were on it and a couple of issues, exposed them. Exposed the one candidate. The sheriff won re-election. He won a couple more re-elections, and he finally retired this time. And so now we've got a new sheriff, and I passed one of these books on to him. And so hopefully he's read it. But it's just a little insight about the difference that your book made. And I hope everyone reads it, because as you said, as the title of your book says, you're the last line of defense
Yes,
when
sir.
in your county. You know, you're
Yes.
the supreme, the county sheriff is the supreme law enforcement officer in that county,
Yes.
bottom line. So that's something that you didn't know that, but you had that effect right here in my county.
Well, we've heard other stories like that, but what we do know also is just about every election for sheriff in the country now has some, like you alluded to, some sort of constitutional question. And usually you'll hear, as a candidate for sheriff, do you consider yourself a, will you consider yourself a constitutional sheriff? And then they usually have some time to explain their answer. And so that gives a lot of credence to the work we've been doing the last 12 years. And I'm grateful for the people that have really gotten behind us. And I would tell all your listeners, everybody who's interested in saving our country, I don't believe there's another solution that is both peaceful and effective, such as ours. The sheriff standing with his citizens in defense of liberty, in defense of our Constitution, and in defense of God-given rights. And it is a peaceful, effective process. And quite honestly, I don't see another one out there that is that effective and peaceful at the same time. And if we have our sheriff standing with our citizens in the holy cause of liberty, we can take America back tomorrow. We just need more sheriffs doing this. We have about 250 that are pretty versed and pretty dedicated to it, but we need to have about 1,000 to really make it work.
Yeah. Well, one of the, I don't know nothing about the man, but one of the great things that I seen was here recently, a month or so ago, when the governor of New Mexico
Yes.
came out with her gun law, and
Mhm.
you know the sheriffs there were saying, no, we're not going to enforce this, not at all. So
No, that
that
was
was great to see.
Sheriff John Allen of Bernalillo County, New Mexico.
Yeah.
And then miraculously, the chief of police came out and did the same thing. And then the attorney of the state told the governor, we're not going to go along with your order because all three of them said it's unconstitutional. And that's exactly the training we want every sheriff and peace officer in this country to have. They should be able to know and recognize when a piece of legislation, a bill, an act is unconstitutional and therefore stand against it. And that's exactly what we teach and preach.
Yeah. And so that's good. We see a lot of that on the Second Amendment and guns.
Yeah.
Let me pick your mind quickly, if you don't mind, on civil asset forfeiture. Exactly. Exactly.
Now, look, I don't want to come across too awfully negative on it, but the way it is presently constituted, it is a double negative. It's ridiculous. And in fact, I'll tell you quite honestly, it's against the law. What some police agencies and sheriff's offices are doing in this country to literally take money from suspects before they're convicted of anything.
Yeah.
Take it and put it in their departmental budgets and use it to supplement and augment their police budgets.
Yeah.
And that's a conflict of interest. You cannot get paid by the suspects for the work that we're doing in law enforcement. You absolutely cannot do that, and they do it to people who are totally innocent of a crime.
Right.
You know, and most people that I talk to in law enforcement will say, "Oh, well, those are very isolated cases." And I said, "You wouldn't be saying that if that was your mother or you or one of your children or your wife that's the one being having their property confiscated." And it happens in airports quite often. If somebody has 10,000 or more in a briefcase or in a suitcase in a airport, they'll take it away from you, and you have to come prove how you
Mhm.
got it and that you got it legally and lawfully. And if you can't prove it, they'll keep it.
Yeah.
And there's police agencies and law and sheriff's offices nationwide who do that. And
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that is wrong, immoral, and as I said, not just unconstitutional, but that's criminal conflict of interest.
Yeah. We had a news station out of Nashville who did a in-depth study on it here in Tennessee, and what they
Mhm.
found out was the drugs normally come in, so they say, on the eastbound lanes, and the money
Mhm.
goes out on the westbound lanes. So all the law enforcement agency and the drug interdiction units and stuff were all set up on the westbound lane so they could catch the money going out instead of the drugs coming in.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show you what
Oh,
they cared so
gee.
much about. So
Yeah.
uh,
It it's a money making enterprise now, and I'll say the same thing about something else we've done in law enforcement for the last 75 years, maybe longer, and that's traffic citations.
yeah,
And I call them, this is a Sheriff Mackism, taxation through citation.
yes,
And they very rarely have anything to do with public safety. I'm all for uh, police presence on our highways and in our towns. I absolutely advocate for that. But just sitting there writing tickets all day and bringing in money for the state or for the county or city is counterproductive to what we're trying to do. Uh, we're after Our goal is compliance, but also we're after the cooperation of the people willingly,
yeah,
and we're here to teach them and to treat them properly, and to sit there and gouge them with a a $5 billion industry for with the radar tickets and photo radar tickets and all this crap just to gain money and raise money. No, that's not our job, and we shouldn't be doing it. And tickets should be very seldom and few and far between. But working and getting out there, working with neighborhoods and communities to try to get people to slow down and to be safe drivers. That's the type of leadership that we need in law enforcement, not just another bunch of tax collectors.
yeah. I told my wife the other day a statement I seen one time from a law enforcement officer training other officers. And he made the statement that said, if you follow someone for 3 blocks and you can't find a reason to pull them over, you don't know the law.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
that's
I'm
right.
like, wow, if you're having to find a way, an excuse to pull someone over, what are you really looking for? Um,
Including a cop,
yeah,
most traffic cops.
yeah.
I see them all the time. Improper lane change, turn without a signal,
Mhm.
following too closely. I mean, there's lots of them.
Yeah, it blows your mind, and that's one of the things that when this study on civil asset forfeiture, uh, they were had news helicopters following these drug units on I-40, and they pulled this car over, said he was weaving in between the lanes, and he wasn't. And actually, it was the police vehicle that was crossing the line and stuff. So they asked him about it and showed him video, and they said, "But what you really doing? What you pulled him over for?" So that's pretty good. So, got a question for you. So, if someone new or is just a couple of years into law enforcement, peace officer. And myself, I say there's a difference between a peace officer and law enforcement.
Of course, there is.
And so if someone is just newly getting into law enforcement or been there for a few years, what advice would you give them on how to go about doing their job and being a good moral peace officer?
Well, I would say first and foremost, if you don't know and understand the Constitution and the reason you took an oath, if you don't understand that, then you're missing the boat entirely for which you were put in that uniform. And I'm not kidding. You cannot take an oath to uphold and defend in God's name, no less.
Mhm.
So help me God, we say
Yes.
in that oath, that we will uphold, defend, protect, and preserve the United States Constitution and the Constitution in the state where we work. And if we don't keep that oath, we have committed perjury. And you have taken an oath that to the people, to protect the people's rights, and you don't even know what that means. Shame on you.
Right.
So it's real easy to repent on that, Charles.
Yes.
Get the Constitution, read it, and then memorize the principles in each of the first 10 amendments. In other words, the Bill of Rights. You don't have to memorize them word for word. For instance, there's 5 principles in number 1. Okay. And I don't have it memorized exactly word for word, but I do know it guarantees to the American people freedom of religion,
Mhm.
freedom of speech, freedom of the press, the right to peaceably assemble, and the right to petition government for a redress of grievance. Redress means they have to do something about it. And so I'm telling you, if you know the Bill of Rights, there's about 28 principles in the Bill of Rights that you have sworn, and you're a guard of the Constitution. You are a protector of liberty. That's our job as police officers. And if you understand those principles, the Second Amendment's not the only one you need to know.
Right.
You need to know the third, which is no quartering of troops. And not only that, do we understand the first part of the Second Amendment? Do we? Where it talks about a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state.
Right.
Man, what a beautiful idea. And then find out from the founding fathers, what is a militia? And George Mason from Virginia said, when properly formed, it is the people themselves.
Right.
And consists of all men capable of bearing arms. So they weren't talking about something subversive that today's media has vilified the word militia. It's the M word. Oh, you can't say militia anymore. Why don't you find out why the founding fathers mentioned the word militia about 5 times in the Constitution and once in the Second Amendment? But know the Constitution, especially the Bill of Rights, and then you'll know your job.
Right. And that's for every elected person, not just a law
Absolutely.
enforcement officer or a police
Yes.
officer.
It's for all 3 branches and everybody therein.
Yep.
Yes.
And one thing I will add to that is how many people in Israel on October the 7th would have probably been alive today if they would have been able to keep and bear arms like us. When those people come across, when Hamas come across that border on October the 7th, if those people would have been able to shoot back on their own, a lot of them would have probably been alive today, and their children too.
Good point.
Now I know by watching several of your videos, as I said, I followed you for many years, and I know that there was in one of your videos you talked about your aha moment. You know, when I think you said you pulled a lady over that rolled through a stop sign.
Yep.
See, I keep up. I've watched you. so that I think you said that was your moment when you said you felt terrible for writing her a ticket. You just you couldn't do it. And
right. And I didn't give it to her. I wrote it, but I didn't give it to her.
Right. And so that's what I would tell. I'm sure that many law enforcement officers have that moment when they say, man, is this what I'm doing is right? Is it right? Well, then you're having that moment. And as you said, you need to pick up the Constitution and start reading it. And I'd even go further. I'd say pick up the copy of the Declaration of Independence and read
Oh,
it.
that too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
because in the Declaration of Independence, it describes what the purpose of all government is for. The Constitution really doesn't. The Constitution doesn't really tell you what our constitutional government is for, but the Declaration of Independence does. And right after that, we're endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's the next 10 words.
yes.
And yes, I challenge everyone in government and on this call to memorize these words, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Almost sounds religious, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think it is. So the reason we have government is to protect these rights. And then you have to identify those. Declaration of Independence says it's 3 basic ones: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How have we been doing on those? How have we been doing on protecting life?
Yeah.
How have we been doing protecting individual liberty? And how are we at protecting the rights of the individual to own his own property? That's what pursuit of happiness is. It's my family. It's my child. It's my life. It's my property and it's my business. And as long as I'm not hurting anyone else, I'm not talking about offending someone else.
Right.
The Constitution doesn't protect us from being offended. If I'm not hurting anyone else, government has to leave me alone.
Right.
And that's a key component of liberty. How do we measure liberty? By how much government leaves us alone.
Right. Well, we definitely for the last 50 years have not protected life in this country.
No.
And we're basically renting our property from the government now.
Right.
You know, so I think every county and city in the country is dealing with that right now. We're dealing with it here. So you're correct, and I'll even go as expand on beyond yours, and it also tells you exactly where where the government gets its powers, and it is in the 10th Amendment as well, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government.
Amen.
So the only powers that the government has is what we give them. And people have to get that in their mind.
And we ourselves cannot give them something that we do not have.
Right, exactly. So I could have this discussion all night long. Like I said, folks like you and Dr. Ron Paul have really changed my life on things like this. So, now let's talk about protecting lives. I sent you this article, and it was the article I sent you is actually from the Tennessee, and it's that's the newspaper out of Nashville. But back in let's see, last year, I believe, we had some people that was arrested for protesting at a clinic, an abortion clinic in Nashville. Now, no, that article was actually from the Hill, the Heritage Foundation. And anyway, so they were arrested by the local law enforcement group down there, the police department, and pretty much had it under control. Some fines that was written out for trespassing. Then, lo and behold, out of the blue, in rides the federal government, the Justice Department, and the FBI, and arrest some of these people. Well, some of them come from out of state. They all got together as a group. Some of them was from Tennessee. Some of them was from Pennsylvania and a couple other states. But the FBI comes in and arrests them under the Freedom of Access to Clinic Interest Act. It's called the FACE Act. You got the federal government coming in and taking up stuff like that. How how could local law enforcement or even the governor of Tennessee, people don't understand this, but I'd like for you to explain it. Do we have to
Well,
bow to the federal law enforcement coming into our states and our counties?
well, we're going to refer to this decision a little bit on this one, but we're going to first start with a review of some of our constitutional principles. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the purpose of the Constitution was to limit
Right.
what government can do to us. It was to establish some very strong, lawful perimeters. And if you can imagine what the founding fathers just went through with the Revolutionary War and the decades of abuse from King George III and other kings there and the English Parliament. What would be a natural intent of them in forming a new central government for America? Well, of course, it was to make sure that those abuses were never to be repeated again. And so they devised a constitution that would prevent those abuses from ever being perpetrated by any future governments in America. And so that was their intent. Stop the abuse, stop the oppression, and stop tyranny. And they came up with a very solid constitution to do that. But they also depended on the people who swore those oaths to keep it. And that oath and that government official who swore that oath is somebody we have to be able to trust to do that in order to perpetuate liberty. Mm-hmm. So there you go. We're gonna perpetuate liberty. But what does it specifically say? Well, they wanted to limit the federal government. Remember that. That's important. So how many law enforcement authorities and powers were granted to the new federal government by the states? Oh no, it's not zero.
Yeah.
It's almost zero. But there's 5, and I think you'll recognize some of them. One is treason.
Right.
The federal government has the authority to go after traitors in our country. Mm-hmm. Okay. Second, counterfeiting.
Yeah.
That is a federal offense. Okay. Number 3, felonies committed on the high seas or piracies.
Right.
You know, the states probably wouldn't be too good at forming their own coast guards and boats and going after people where really they don't have much jurisdiction. You know, Texas. You know, what about Ohio that doesn't have any oceans? How would they go protect some of their citizens that were robbed on a cruise liner or something? You know, right. So that's also federal offense. The other one, the last one, is they are required by Article 4, Section 4 to protect our state's borders from invasion.
Yeah.
So you can see what a bang up job they're doing on all of those.
Yeah.
And but you see, the thing of it is, that's it. Now, if the federal government wants to if they want to expand their own power, then somebody must refer them to the 10th Amendment. The powers not delegated, and that's a key word, delegated.
Right.
We delegated these powers to the new federal government. We didn't surrender them. We didn't give them to them. We delegated. A boss can delegate, and that's what we did. The states formed a new servant called the federal government. They were given certain powers and responsibilities, and if they didn't fulfill them, we could certainly undelegate them and take them back and do them ourselves. However, regardless of that, if they try to pass new laws and say, oh, we can do whatever we want because the governors will go along because we're Democrats and they're Democrats, or the governors will go along because they're Republicans and we're Republicans, and we'll send them a bunch of money. And this whole grant system of federal bribes is bogus. And so how do we keep them that way? Well, let's go to Mack Prince VUS. And first it says that it is incontestable that the Constitution established a system of dual sovereignty, that the new Congress was not granted all governmental powers, but only what kind? Discrete enumerated ones. And that's right here in this decision. And another one, we have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. States are not subject to federal direction. They are subject to us. But we've got it all backwards, Charles.
Right. Absolutely.
And I don't know how this came about. I think the two-party system had a lot to do with it. The money, wanting the money from the federal government, which they have no business doing in the first place. That's totally illegal. But we have got to recognize that the 10th Amendment and the most powerful 10th Amendment decision is right here. And this one, Scalia wrote the decision in this case for Sheriff Prince and me. And he says this, when he takes us through a history lesson in this. In fact, Scalia told us this decision is going to be from a historical perspective. It's a history lesson.
Yeah.
And he said this, he quotes Federalist Paper 51. And later he quotes Federalist 39. He quotes the founding fathers, he quotes the Constitution, quotes the Declaration of Independence. When he said this, and this is so key and vital, all of you have got to understand this. Hence, a double security arises to the rights of the people. The different governments will control each other at the same time that each will be controlled by itself. It's the job of the counties and the cities and the states to erect the barriers, as Madison put it, erect the barriers against the encroachments of the national authority. Yeah. When they pass a so-called law that allows them to come in and do a double jeopardy violation of the Fifth Amendment on a citizen who's already been arrested for the same thing, already been tried or whatever, doesn't matter. The federal government is out of line, and the sheriffs and we the people and the states and the governors should all be telling them, you're not going to come in here and do that. And the sheriff needs to put these agencies on notice and saying, you're not going to come in here and arrest somebody that we've already arrested.
Right.
He's already been brought to justice. And you have no authority to be doing this, and you're violating the 10th Amendment, and you're violating your authority. You have 5 granted delegated powers when it comes to law enforcement. You go outside that, you must refer to the 10th Amendment. Case over.
And, because of you and some other ones like you, we've seen that play out, and where sheriffs have stepped up who knew the Constitution and sent the federal law enforcement agency, the Justice Department, packing. And I've talked about it before in some of my other videos where I've talked about you and the sheriff from Elkhart, Indiana, protecting the Amish dairy farmer, and other ones. Right. Other different cases where they understand their power as a sheriff and what the Constitution limits the federal government to. And
so much of that is common sense, but it's also common law, and it's the supreme law of the land. And if we would just get back to enforcing the supreme law of the land and the Bill of Rights. I mean, here we're talking about the 10th Amendment. It's part of the Bill of Rights. It's the supreme of the supreme laws of the land. And if we have law enforcement, if we have true peace officers or sheriffs who understand their role in defending liberty, then we would take back America tomorrow. And I pray that the good Lord will fund our organization and fund what we're doing and quit making it so difficult for us.
Right.
And
Yeah.
get this really rolling a lot better than we have the last 12 years.
Yeah. Another question, and this is right here in my own home town. Um, we have a family from Germany who came here. They are the Ramaka family, and I think I'm pronouncing that correct.
That's correct.
They came here probably about 15 years ago. Came over from Germany and filed for asylum, uh, so they could come here and homeschool their kids. They didn't want their kids being educated in the education system in Germany. And so it was, you know, basically what our education, public education, government controlled education system is turning into. So they filed for asylum and it was granted, and then it was reneged on. And then during the Obama administration, and then so uh, now, I mean, then they went for several years here, didn't have no more trouble. And now under the Obama administration and their Justice Department, Immigration and Customs Enforcement is every year these people have to go check in. Once a year they have to go
Right.
check in. So they show up in Knoxville and all of a sudden they're told you're going to be deported in 1 month. And so, make a long story short, a lot of people got involved. The Congresswoman here, Diana Harshbarger, got involved. We got to stay for at least 12 months to hopefully so they can get things together. But is there anything what can local politicians and local people do to help this family that's come here and made this place their life? They've had kids here now, they got grandkids here to keep, we got people coming across the border by the thousands every day.
Yeah.
And you got somebody here that doesn't take a dime of government money, that's living here, and now all of a sudden they want to deport them. What can local people do?
Well, first of all, that kind of cruelty and that kind of hypocrisy from our federal government is just mind blowing. We have people who are not bringing in illicit drugs, fentanyl, killing 100,000 people every year with these types of drugs. We have people who are not involved in any criminal activity at the border, human trafficking, sexual exploitation of children, and yet the federal government somehow has time after these law-abiding citizens. I would call them citizens. They've been here too long not to be citizens. The Biden administration, Obama administration made exceptions for the DACA people and people who were born here and raised here. They're making all sorts of exceptions here. Now we have an entire family that's an exception and should be. And the hypocrites in Washington, D.C. and the bullies in Washington, D.C. simply their cruelty knows no ends and no boundaries at all for such bullying. And so my first inclination would be, yes, have your sheriff get involved and understand this and have him help them. But I would say your governor needs to help, and your U.S. senators and your congressmen should be getting involved in this. Say, look, these people have already been here. They should be getting a hold of the director of ICE and Mayorkas even, and Mayorkas is such a liar, though. I don't know what you'll get from him. But right now, I don't think Biden wants the heat on this. But from day to day, he doesn't know what's going on either.
Right.
So you might want to contact his wife because she knows what's going on, but he simply doesn't. And believe me, I'm not putting him down for that, but I do know the disease he has, and Parkinson's is a horrible thing to die from. My dad did it. My father-in-law did it, and he has the exact same symptoms as they did the last year of their life. But my point is this: you should absolutely be contacting any and all congressmen from Tennessee and asking them for help. If you don't get help from one, go to another, and maybe contact all of them at the same time. But your U.S. senators from Tennessee, absolutely, you should be contacting them. If you don't get any help from them, contact Rand Paul, Dr. Rand Paul, and ask him for some help.
Yeah.
Because you get so many senators and congressmen moving on this. They are the federal government. The federal government is doing this. And so I think as far as the governor and the sheriff and maybe some other state legislators is saying, hey, we know these people, they're productive people. But as far as them getting in the way, it would be better this time for Congress, members of Congress and the Senate. They carry a lot of weight, and especially right now with the new Speaker of the House, they should be getting moving. And Tennessee is a better state than that. And I would say your two senators especially should be getting involved in this.
Yes, and I do know that Harshbarger has already filed a bill in Washington to try to address some of this stuff. But I will give her credit; she really went to bat for them and everything. So hopefully we can get this resolved. And I mean, these people have been here for 15 years, got kids, and as I said, kids that are born here.
Yeah.
As
See, and that's beyond DACA, which
right,
the Latin Americans get quite readily.
right,
But good people like this who are proven to be very productive citizens, this should be a slam dunk.
right,
And the cruelty of trying to send them back, what would they hope to accomplish? Well, they don't even send anybody back at the border, but they're willing to come into the middle of the heartland of America and send some people from Tennessee back to Germany. Why? What's that going to accomplish? No,
nothing,
come on,
nothing.
no.
I think I really don't know what they're thinking. I think they're just uh, thinking, well, if you want to deport these, it comes across the border, we'll just hit you with these, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah.
I don't know. Well, Sheriff, I appreciate you joining me tonight and everything. And it's a pleasure for me to talk to you. Like I said, I've admired you for a while and appreciate the work you've done. You've done God's work in this country by helping law enforcement officers and other folks understand the Constitution, the role of a peace officer, and the sheriffs and everything. So I appreciate it. And when we sign off here, please stay on the call. We'll talk a little bit more if you don't care. But anyway, thank you for joining me. Anything you want to add? Talk about your site, some of the things that you do. Do you tour? Do you speak? If anybody would like to have you come and speak a little
Yeah.
bit about that before we get off.
Well, we've done our training out in Tennessee just about 3 months ago. We'd love to come back. Everybody needs our training. This Constitution for peace officers, the Constitution for sheriffs, the Constitution for teachers, Constitution for citizens. We provide all of that. And on top of it, we add a miraculous Supreme Court case. And all of these are available on our website. Go to shop and get, it looks like a real big book on the way it's pictured, but it's a white one with all the state flags on it. Get this, get the proper role of law enforcement, the book, Are You a David? The Magic of Gun Control. Get all of the books. Those are huge educations. But folks, please do this. Become a member of the CSPOA posse. It's $11 a month or $99 a year, or make whatever donation you can. Pray about it. If you can really donate 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000, if you can donate even more than that, God bless you as you do, because we really need this. We really need the financial support. The only way we're funded is by your memberships and your donations. We've dedicated our lives to this. We've pledged our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor to this. And I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to give up. And I hope that you will join us in this holy cause of liberty. We cannot stop and we cannot give up.
Yeah.
And
Thank
it's
you.
at CSPOA, CSPOA.org.
And it starts right here in the right where we are and pushing out. It's not going to be fixed from Washington in. Never,
Oh, never,
never.
never.
It starts at your getting involved in your local county and city governments and working its way out to the states. And that's the only way it's going to change. And with good folks like you and other sheriffs and other people who are in county governments and city governments that actually take a stand and know their constitutional role. And with that, anything else you want to add?
Carlos, thanks so much for having me. I look forward to a long and strong friendship and those of all your followers and the people of Tennessee. What a great state. We need to make it happen there.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you. Thank you all for watching. Please share this video with your friends and neighbors. If you've got friends that are in law enforcement, send it to them. Let them watch it. And if you're a law enforcement officer and you want to know more about how you can get involved to make your city and county a better place, contact him on the website. And I'm sure if you'd like to talk to him, email him. He'll get in touch with you and mentor you. So with that, thank you. God bless you. Y'all have a great day, and we'll see you on the next podcast. Bye-bye.